Delighted to say joining me for the show, as always on a Tuesday, is Tom Slater, the editor of Spiked Online. Very good morning to you.
Morning, Julia.
Are you as excited as I am about the Prime Minister's birthday?
Absolutely. How can you not be? Many happy returns. Keir Starmer, I hope you have a good day, unlike the year that you've inflicted on the rest of us.
I hope you have a good day, unlike most people in Britain living under your premiership.
Quite.
I want to talk about this 1 in 1 out migrant deal. Shall we though quickly just play a clip of a video that the Prime Minister put out on social media yesterday? I mean, strong David Brent echoes, it's got to be said. But this was a video that the Prime Minister put out telling us all about how, I don't remember ever getting this memo, we are no longer in phase 1 of his government, we're now in phase 2. Have a watch and a listen.
Summer's definitely over, and this morning we've got all the number 10 staff together and talked through what phase 2 of the government is going to look like and feel like. So we go into phase 2, 1st of September 2025, in good spirits, confident and with conviction about what we're doing. It needs a more powerful number 10, so we've added to the team with some really important new members and made a number of other changes, but this is about focus on delivery now, marching forward to the next phase.
I mean, I don't know about you, I feel buoyed up and certainly I'm marching into phase 2 with the good spirits, confidence and conviction about what we're doing that the Prime Minister feels. Do you share all those feelings, Tom?
Well, I just think phase 1 was such a roaring success. I can't wait to find out what phase 2 has in store for us.
So many successes, we can't list them.
No, exactly. I mean, there are too many to name, and also I think because of how bad.
I can't even keep a straight face.
Well, whose idea was that? Like, who is that for? That looks. It's not.
It's
even
the fact that he said.
Internal
So we go to phase 2, 1st of September. I mean, he actually says the date. Like, do they not even know the date in that room?
Apparently, they need to be told it. There's also there's something kind of vaguely sinister about it as well. It's like phase 1 is complete. The immiseration continues into phase 2.
But it's a bit year zero Mao, isn't it?
Exactly. Like he's got his kind of, it's like a 5-year plan.
Yeah, we're all going to be sent back to the fields to put up solar panels.
Yeah.
And then the executions begin. And anyone with said,
well, at least that would liven things up. I mean, the thing about that video and this week and this reshuffle that wasn't, it was just about kind of shuffling the mandarins around. You think, what? Like, I've never seen a government that's both so disastrous and boring at the same time.
That is a
toxic
very, very interesting point, because Boris's government was disastrous in lots of ways, so mostly towards the end, and lots of stuff we found out afterwards, like the Boris wave of migrants, but it was never boring.
Yeah.
And then you get this sort of, you think John Major, it's very, very, very dull and boring. But I mean, what we would do for a little bit of, I mean, I've always said, people say, oh, I don't like people who are ideological. I'd love someone who has a proper ideology and a philosophy and a vision. I'd love that. But I will also accept someone who's just quite dull, but is a good manager. As I've said, put the guy who manages to get things on the shelves in Tesco for the right weather when it's a barbecue and things like that. Get that man or woman in charge of the country. Someone who can just quietly get stuff done. That would do. I'll take that as a second option. But someone who's utterly incompetent, with no vision, no anything, anything discernible. I'm always fascinated. I do have a bunch of lefties in my family, and I remember some of them saying to me when Keir Starmer became elected in 2020, and they, some of them knew him in the North London. That is my world, which is why I know it so well. Okay, and they really think, this guy was the great White Hope. This guy he's a visionary. He's a leader. It's like, what are you seeing and hearing that I'm not? I mean, it's his birthday today. I mean, you just see the social media is just a gosh. Every single message this man puts out on social media is met with utter contempt and derision every single time. In particular, the reshuffle, as you say, the reshuffle. We barely even mentioned it on the show yesterday because it was so blur. And I mean, even though some of the people he's bringing in communications, like Tim Allen, used to work for Tony Blair, I mean, the man knows his stuff. Okay, he's absolutely hotshot.
David Dinsmore, formerly of this building,
of this parish, exactly.
Impressive person.
But again, an awful lot of people who do understand things like that, the PR. However, they're also all people who are totally and utterly part of that whole Blairite, Starmerite, lefty HR lawyer, HR human rights lawyer sort of zeitgeist. They genuinely do not get, and I was that awful phrase, ordinary people. No, they don't get most people in this country. They genuinely recoil from people talking about British culture, and they see the British flag and the English flag even more and go, ooh. It's sort of like, you know, kryptonite to them. I mean, they don't, none of these people get it. I have no hope that, you know, Darren Jones moving from the Treasury to number 10 is going to make a blind bit of difference to the ability of this government to put out an economic policy or any other policy that might work.
And it's one of those things where I'm sure that many of these individuals are perfectly impressive on their own terms. It's just the fact that, especially when it comes to the communication side, they're being brought in to sell a vision that does not exist. Yeah. It's like, how can you sell a product that you can't hold in your hands? I mean, it's this whole vacuum is at the centre of government because it is Keir Starmer. The fact that you've got Darren Jones being moved over from essentially being
number 2 to Rachel Reeves,
exactly, to now being in number 10, I think also indicates that there's just a lack of talent at the top in terms of people actually in kind of more ministerial level posts.
I mean, the only one anyone's heard of,
you've got him around,
Angela Rayner,
an indication, isn't it?
You've got Yvette Cooper. Can you hear the tumbleweed? I mean, who else is there in government you could even recognise?
No, exactly. I mean, there's this week I was reminded that Nick Thomas-Symonds existed because he was out, you know, giving some speeches about Brexit. But they have not cut through at all, and that's not just a media thing. It's because the fact that they just and nor is this exclusively a problem on the Labour benches, by the way. But just having politicians of stature is something which this generation really struggle with, and so therefore it's almost immaterial.
And just sort of intellectual ballast behind them. Yeah, exactly. And you think of, you know, I mean, I think back in the 1970s and 1980s, and you think about, you know, some of the big beasts on the left and the right. I mean, serious players. You had to listen when they said something. You had to listen. Everyone knew who they were. And like, well, I mean, Yvette Cooper's constantly on the telly. I mean, virtually all the items we're talking about in the next hour, you think, oh, they're all under Yvette Cooper's remit. And let's face it, I think the woman works hard. I think she's a bright woman. She's been around for years. She was in the Blair government, the Brown government. I mean, you know, she knows what she's talking about. But again, completely on the wrong side of history, and you know what she's trying to do when it comes to things like illegal migration. She doesn't really believe in any of it because she is a no borders lefty in her heart of hearts. But 10th of July, it was announced when Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron had that big summit here in the UK. It was announced that there was this one in, one out migrant deal. I mean, we all just laughed at the time, didn't we? It's like, that wasn't what we were looking for. It was ratified. Well, it was confirmed a few days later in the Commons. Almost a month later, on the 4th of August, it was ratified, so this is definitely going to happen. We know that within a couple of days, people were detained. I mean, here's a mind-blowing idea. Let's detain people who enter the country illegally. It has now been admitted by the Home Office that no Channel migrants have been returned to France yet under the one in, one out deal, despite 3,567 people arriving since the deal was struck. I mean, this is laughable.
No, and even on its own terms, it was always laughable because how small it was going to be. You know, what about like 50 people a week? It averaged out to like 17 in, maybe one out. And then you look at some of the small print. I think as soon as we, you know, detain someone and earmark them for deportation, we have to do that within 14 days. Then the French get 28 days to respond to it. If they don't respond to it, it just sort of disappears or whatever. Also, the French government could collapse any moment now. There's a vote of confidence in the Prime Minister next week, I think. So and they haven't even passed some of the legislation to put this deal into place.
And for instance, things like being able to go into the water.
No, exactly. It was essentially never going to touch the sides, even if it went off perfectly. And there's a good chance it could completely unravel any day now.
I know, Yvette Cooper this morning kept saying, again and again, listen to lots of interviews she did, I mean, she kept saying, the last government lost complete, control of this issue. True. She said, the Rwanda deal was up and running for 2 years, and the only people who were sent back were 4 people who did it voluntarily and were paid to go there. But it wasn't up and running. So that's, again, she's selling shit. And what annoys me is the people interviewing her don't challenge her on this and say, no, that's not true, it wasn't up and running. One of the reasons why it wasn't up and running was because you and your mates made all the challenges and tried to stop it. That said, Tories utterly incompetent on this issue as well. But we did have a few more announcements yesterday in that big statement that we expected, and we talked about it on the show in advance, but that migrants who've been granted asylum, and again, a lot of these people haven't been granted asylum in other countries in Europe. We have a much higher rate, and often they're granted asylum on appeal, will be temporarily blocked from bringing family to the UK. Again, temporarily, that doesn't quite hack it. But the key thing is, when we're talking about these sort of family reunion schemes, they don't seem to be just for, mum, dad and 3 siblings. you know, 3 kids. We're talking about, you know, grandparents, in-laws, your brother-in-law, your cousins. I mean, and there was one case that was reported. Over 20 members of a family were invited in. You know, Mum's been busy. Have you thought of contraception? I'm thinking at this point. No, but I mean, but it's just. Yeah. But we're not talking about, you know, parents and children being reunited.
And I think it's a good example, actually, of when you lose control of your asylum system, you end up having to do quite blunt things. So clearly, if it becomes a route for essentially chain migration, as you describe, and also if you just lose control of the system in general, which is overwhelmed with people who are basically illegal migrants or who are coming in just unsustainable levels for us to absorb. Because in a kind of managed asylum system from places that the public are generally comfortable with, a manageable level or whatever, I don't think the idea of, you know, bringing over someone's son or husband or whatever would be controversial at all. But the government finds itself having to do these things because it has to demonstrate it's got a grip on them, even though even on its own terms, this is not obviously going to have a huge effect.
And we have seen exposure. I mean, even when it comes to things like students, foreign students coming over, and Nigeria apparently were the worst of offenders on this issue, where someone's coming over to study in the UK and they're bringing in, you know, 10 family members. Like, OK, you're a mature student, you're married with 2 kids, you're going to bring your other half and your 2 kids. I don't think many people would think that was controversial, assuming you were going to go home or take up a great job and get a work visa here. But, you know, that's not what's happened. It's interesting today that, you know, the warning that has gone out to foreign students saying, don't overstay your visa because there might be trouble. You think, did no one think of doing this before? You know, when you fill out a form, if you go to America and you fill out a form, you know, if you lie on this form, you know, if any false information, you will be deported. You will not be able to return. You don't mess about. Well, certainly not under Trump. You don't mess about on things like that. I mean, again, you know, it's the law-abiding people who get caught up in these things. But huge number of the people who we believe are illegal migrants in this country have arrived here perfectly legally. They've just stayed. And you might think, oh, well, at least they're students. They're not illegal migrants. So they were able to get the idea, oh, what, you think these people are properly vetted? Give me a break. They're not. But also, the fact that we have no idea how many are here, how many have left, an awful lot of these people who've come here who then miraculously suddenly discover, oh, it turns out I can't go home because I need to claim asylum. You know, these people are on courses. They're not doing masters in engineering. You know, they're not all medical students. We're talking about people on English language courses, a lot of them. I mean, you know, people who they're of no economic value to us whatsoever. They shouldn't have been here in the first place.
And it's one of those things where I think in this case it might not even be just that the government or the state has been a soft touch, but that it's just been inept. This is one of the things that Dominic Cummings likes to talk about when he was in Downing Street.
They don't know who's here.
Yeah, and that was one thing he was working on before he gets the heave-ho, was that actually just trying to count in and count out. That's something that you just assume the government
I can understand it. When we had to fill out little paper forms, you know, when you go, I mean, you go to fairly basket case countries around the world, and you do, as you know, do a lot of travelling, and you have to fill out some little form. You just think, yeah, that is literally going into a pile in a warehouse somewhere. No one's looking at that, you know, but you've got to make sure you've written the right things on it. You get a stamp. I mean, no one even looks at your passport picture. You're just going through the motions.
Absolutely.
And we did that for many years, but then everything's become electronic. And, you know, they're scanning your passport, you know, you're having to go through those gates and things. Surely there is a record of who is here and who's not. How do they not know who is in the country? And the fact I always come back to is when we left the EU, and they wanted to basically make sure that everyone who'd been here and been living here for years as an EU citizen, who'd come here legally, working and living here, often with partners who were British, so they could stay. And basically, you needed to register by a certain date. Say, hello, I've been here for a long time. I'd like to be able to stay. All fine. Had no issue with any of that. But this was not about throwing people out. This was about, you know, drawing a line. And they thought there'd be roughly 3 million people. It turns out there were over 5. I think that 5.5 million people registered now. Either some of those people were lying, could be the case. No one keeps a record of when they've come in, or those people literally in the system. Now, bearing in mind, those people were here legally, able to work legally and pay tax and all of that. But there were 2+ million people in the country we knew nothing about, right? They'd had to scan their passports, the same as you and I did. We knew nothing about them. What are the odds that there are more than that of people who are here completely illegally and had no right to be here? I think it's probably quite high. So when people talk about there may be 1 million illegal migrants in this country, I think people are living in cloud cuckoo land. I'd be very surprised if it wasn't above 3.
And especially because of those numbers in particular about the EU citizens. That's not a rounding error. I mean, that's,
No, that's
you know,
not. There are 200,000 more people we hadn't realised.
This is absolutely incredible, but this is the British state, unfortunately. It's you know, it's governed badly and by people with the wrong policies and so on and so forth. But it also just can't do the basics in to quite a staggering degree.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of the
and
issue.
that's always my thing about, like, why are you telling me how much sugar there can be in cereal I buy, or where a supermarket can put chocolate on its aisles? You worry about, you know, you do you. Let the supermarkets do them, and I'll do me, and I'll decide what I put in my shopping basket.
It thinks it can completely, you know, change our energy grid. It thinks it can make us go all net zero. It can't even count who's in and who's out of the country.
Can't even do the most. Well, can't even arrest and imprison shoplifters. You can you get the basics right? And then this is like someone who's like, you know, his house is on fire and going, you know, oh, I'm just going to mend this leaky tap. I mean, you're just not dealing with the real issue. Do you think that one of the things we're mostly looking for is an expedited UK visa scheme for students coming to Britain from Gaza, which the Home Secretary also confirmed yesterday? Because I hear, I mean, when I go to the pub, it's all people are talking about. You know what we need? We need to make sure that some students who want to do masters in in media studies and whatever can get to, and climate change, can get to the UK from their war-torn country to study. I mean, it's what everyone's crying out for, isn't it?
It wouldn't have been the top of my priority list. I'm also very surprised that they came out with this yesterday. This is in the midst of Yvette Cooper trying to answer questions on the question of the border, the question of asylum, in the sense that this has become completely out of control. Why, at this point of all points, they decided to announce this, I think just shows how little grasp they've got of the mood of the country where this issue is concerned.
And again, people are going to be vetted. It's like, yeah, sure they are. I mean, I'm really, really sorry. You're talking about people in a country where the propaganda is off the scale, where people celebrate their children, you know, being blown up as martyrs. I vote no. I vote no, and I include that also with families coming over with children who need to be treated. I'm happy to contribute to them being treated in Qatar or in Saudi or in Egypt or in Jordan, all these countries that claim to be very supportive of the Palestinian people. Yeah, let's help pay for their hospital treatment. Absolutely happy to do that. Israel takes a lot of these people into, you know, pay for their hospital treatment. But I mean, no, thank you. You know for a fact every single one of these families extended families will end up staying here.
Yeah, and you just have to recognise the realities on the ground, because obviously, you know, the primary victims of the Hamas leadership on a day-to-day basis are the Gazans themselves, but at the same time it's a very radicalised population, as you suggest. Hamas were voted into power, it was a long time ago now, but because they haven't had an election since, which tells you everything you need to know about that particular outfit. But there's still a non-negligible portion of the population who have, for understandable reasons, you might say, bought the propaganda, not least because it's enforced at the end of a rifle barrel. So it's one of those things where there's just a refusal to accept the reality of any of these cases. You can, you know, in an ideal world, this might be a lovely idea, but we don't live in an ideal world. That's always the problem that a lot of
but also, again,
politicians
Israel
have.
is fighting an existential war against enemies of Western civilization, not just of the Jewish state, you know, enemies of Western civilization. I'm not entirely sure that when we were at war with Germany that we thought it was a good idea to bring over, you know, people from, I don't know, you know, Bonn to come over here on scholarships. I'm sorry, I just think this is insane. Tell you what's also insane, just finally, is the number of British people, particularly on the left, pretty much only on the left, who have a really big problem with our flag, as we touched on a bit earlier. But the Labour MP Clive Lewis, bit of a, you know, usual suspect. You know,
he can be relied upon to say things like this.
He's claimed that people flying St George's flags outside Migrant Hotel are often extremists who are trying to mark territory. Now, and intimidate. Imagine how intimidating it would be to see Palestinian flags, particularly if you have certain religions. It's an extraordinary thing to say. I mean, again, what do you count as extremist? Saying you don't want loads of illegal migrants in your country. I hate to tell you, Clive, not extremist, really quite a moderate view. The normal view until a few years ago of most politicians. But again, flags are about marking territory, aren't they? But it is. We live in England. The England flag does indeed mark our territory. Not the trans flag, not the pride flag, not the Palestinian flag, but, you know, but the England flag.
And it seems like a lot of people are trying to judge what these protests mean, what the flag raisers mean, what that's all about from afar. And what's become very clear is that if you actually go down and talk to these people, this isn't a sort of ethnic assertion.
And you've
of
been to the Canary
rights.
Wharf protest.
Absolutely, I've gone down there and reported and talked to them. I mean, that's in Tower Hamlets, so you probably expect this, but it's much more multiracial than you would expect. Always a small but significant kind of British Bangladeshi cohort, as well as black British mixed race couples. I mean, it's not what is, you know, Clive Lewis's fever dream, to be perfectly frank. And I'm sure around the edges you might see a bit of it on social media here or there, people who are, you know, racist, who are jumping on the bandwagon of these things. That is not
what's motivating these people
on the whole. So I think there's people would do well to actually talk to some of these individuals, and they might be surprised that they don't always fit the caricature.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to say, by the way, we spoke to Orla Minahane, who is a Reform candidate but one of the protest organisers at Epping, and her friend, fellow organiser Sarah, we saw her being arrested by the police, really manhandled, 5'3" woman, just for putting up a Union Jack flag at the council offices. Apparently some section 14 order to stop them from going near a public building when it wasn't open, and not to damage it, which I find very strange. She was held by the police for the best part of 24 hours, but she was released yesterday. Been in touch with her. Hopefully, going to be speaking to her on the show tomorrow when she's finished dealing with the lawyers. Anyway, 10:27 is the time. Love to hear from you, in particular about Channel migrants. 3,567 of them have arrived since the government's one-in, one-out returns deal.